March 12, 1978. John Cazale was dead at 42. Lung cancer. Final stage. Meryl Streep was 29, holding his hand in a hospital room that smelled of antiseptic and morphine. 24 months later, she was standing under 3,000 watts of Oscar stage lights, holding a gold statue in front of more than 40 million viewers. Within 5 years of his death, she would collect 2 Academy Awards and 5 nominations. The man she loved disappeared. Her legend began. How does a woman walk out of a hospital and straight into immortality? In 1980, just 2 years after John Cazale's death, Meryl Streep stepped onto the Academy Award stage and won Best Supporting Actress for Kramer vs. Kramer. She was 30. The film grossed over $100 million worldwide and won 5 Oscars, including Best Picture. America watched her play Joanna Kramer, a woman judged, condemned, and then forced to fight for a child, and something about her restraint felt painfully real. Then came 1982, Sophie's Choice, a role built around a single unbearable moment. A mother ordered to choose which of her 2 children would live. The performance was not loud. It was controlled, internal, devastating. In 1983, she won her second Oscar. By the age of 34, she had already received 5 Academy Award nominations, 2 Oscars, 5 nominations, before most actors reached their peak. Hollywood called it technique. Critics called it genius. But every milestone came after a hospital room, after loss, after silence. Was the industry witnessing talent at its height, or grief refined into perfection? Meryl Streep was born on June 22, 1949, in Summit, New Jersey. Her father, Harry William Streep Jr., worked as a pharmaceutical executive. Her mother, Mary Wilkinson Streep, had once dreamed of becoming an artist. It was her mother who told her something unusual for a girl growing up in the 1950s. You are capable of anything, not pretty enough, not polite enough, anything. There was no poverty in her childhood, no public scandal, no chaos that tabloids could later dissect. The house was stable, suburban, orderly, but stability carries its own pressure. Excellence was not demanded loudly. It was assumed quietly. If she tried, she would succeed. If she committed, she would win. That expectation settled early and never left. As a teenager at Bernard's High School, she was not immediately the intense, serious performer the world would later know. She was a cheerleader. She enjoyed attention. She liked being admired. But admiration alone was never enough. When she began singing seriously and studying performance, she discovered something more addictive than popularity: control. On stage, emotion could be shaped, pain could be timed, silence could be measured. At Vassar College in the late 1960s, she shifted from light musical roles to classical drama. The transition was deliberate. She did not want to be decorative. She wanted to be respected. Professors noticed her discipline before they praised her talent. She prepared obsessively. She studied accents with near-clinical precision. She read scripts line by line, searching for intention beneath dialogue. It was not raw instinct that defined her early years. It was method. Then came Yale School of Drama. Acceptance there meant competition at the highest level. Students worked relentlessly. Rehearsals stretching late into the night, productions rotating rapidly. Streep performed in more than a dozen stage productions during her time there. Shakespeare, Chekhov, Strindberg, each role layered with complexity. Each performance another test of stamina. Money was tight during those years. She waitressed. She typed manuscripts. She lived simply. But what mattered was not comfort. It was growth. She was building range, control, adaptability. Unlike many actors who rely on charisma, she relied on preparation. Unlike performers who chase fame, she chased mastery. By the early 1970s, she moved to New York City and entered the professional theater scene. The city was raw, competitive, unforgiving, but she did not try to dominate it. She observed. She listened. Directors describe her as focused, almost analytical. She rarely wasted energy in rehearsal. She saved it for performance. There was already a pattern forming. Emotion would be experienced privately, processed internally, then delivered precisely when required. Vulnerability would exist, but on her terms. That structure made her formidable. It also made her guarded. Long before the world associated her with loss, she had already learned how to compartmentalize. Long before the hospital room in 1978, she had trained herself to transform feeling into craft. But when life brings a pain that no rehearsal can prepare you for, does discipline protect you? Or does it trap you inside your own control? In 1976, during rehearsals for Measure at the Delacorte Theater in New York, Meryl Streep met John Cazale. He was 40. She was 27. He was not conventionally handsome, not a matinee idol, not a rising celebrity in the flashy sense. But within the acting community, he carried rare respect. Every film he had appeared in, The Godfather, 1972, The Conversation, 1974, The Godfather Part 2, 1974, Dog Day Afternoon, 1975, had been nominated for Best Picture. 5 films, 5 nominations, an almost unheard of record. Cazale was quiet, intensely focused, allergic to superficial fame. Streep was ambitious but private, driven but disciplined. Their connection formed quickly, not around publicity, but around craft. They rehearsed seriously. They discussed character motivations late into the night. Their relationship grew in apartments filled with scripts and marked-up pages, not red carpets. For Streep, this was different from college romance or early New York dating. Cazale was older, seasoned, grounded. He had already navigated the industry's highs and rejections. He did not see her as a rising star to manage or shape. He saw her as an equal. That mattered. By 1977, Streep's on-screen career was beginning to take shape. She had small roles in Julia and was building a reputation in theater. But the real shift came when she was cast in The Deer Hunter. It was a major studio production. Robert De Niro was attached. The budget was significant. It was the kind of film that could define a career. Then the diagnosis came. Lung cancer. Advanced. Aggressive. Cazale had never been a heavy smoker on screen, but the illness did not care about irony. Insurance companies refused to cover him for The Deer Hunter. Producers considered replacing him. Streep made a decision that few rising actors would risk. She told the studio she would work for minimum pay if they kept Cazale. De Niro personally helped cover insurance concerns. The production moved forward. Cazale worked while visibly weakening. Streep stayed beside him between takes. On set, she was professional. Off set, she was preparing for loss. Hospital visits became routine. Chemotherapy, fatigue, silence. She was 28 years old, on the edge of international recognition, while watching a man she loved shrink under fluorescent hospital lights. The contrast was brutal. In the same year, she appeared in a film that would be nominated for 9 Oscars. She was memorizing medical terminology and medication schedules. The path she was walking was no longer simply professional. It was private, intimate, narrowing. Fame was approaching from one direction. Mortality was approaching from another. March 12, 1978. John Cazale died at 42. Streep was there. The film community mourned a brilliant character actor gone too soon. She mourned something else entirely, a future erased. Within months, she would meet sculptor Don Gummer through mutual friends. Within 6 months, they would marry. The timing unsettled observers. Grief, they assumed, should follow a visible schedule. But grief does not consult public expectation. She did not give interviews about devastation. She did not dramatize her pain. She returned to work. When love and death arrive at the same time, and the world is watching your career rise, how do you decide which version of yourself survives? When The Deer Hunter premiered in December 1978, it became a critical and commercial success, earning 9 Academy Award nominations and winning 5, including Best Picture. Meryl Streep, still grieving, received her first Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actress. She was 29. Hollywood had officially noticed her. In 1979, she appeared in Woody Allen's Manhattan, a smaller role, but one that reinforced her screen presence. That same year came Kramer versus Kramer. The film explored divorce, custody battles, and shifting gender roles in late 1970s America. It struck a cultural nerve. The film grossed over $100 million domestically and became one of the highest-earning dramas of its time. Streep's portrayal of Joanna Kramer, a woman who leaves her child, then returns to fight for him, divided audiences. Some saw her character as selfish. Others saw her as painfully human. In April 1980, she won her first Academy Award. The acceptance speech was brief, composed, controlled. No visible breakdown. No dramatic pause. Just precision. Then came 1981 and 1982. Offers increased. Scripts arrived daily. Directors sought her out not for glamour, but for depth. When she accepted Sophie's choice, it was not a safe decision. The role required a Polish accent, emotional endurance, and a recreation of Holocaust trauma on screen. It demanded technical mastery and psychological stamina. Released in December 1982, the film centered around a single devastating moment. A mother forced to choose which of her two children would survive. Critics called it fearless. Audiences were shaken. In March 1983, she won her second Oscar for Best Actress. By age 34, she had accumulated 5 Academy Award nominations in just 5 years. The numbers were undeniable. 2 Oscars, 5 nominations, multiple box office successes, industry dominance before mid-career. From the outside, it appeared seamless, talent ascending naturally to its rightful place. But the spotlight does not reveal timing. It does not show that every accolade arrived after a funeral, after a hospital room, after a private fracture that never fully closed. The world saw momentum. She felt movement without pause. When success accelerates at the exact moment your personal life is shattered, does achievement heal the break, or simply cover with applause? After John Cazale's death in March 1978, Meryl Streep did not disappear. She did not cancel projects. She did not step away from cameras. Instead, she worked relentlessly. To the public, that looked like resilience. To the industry, it looked like professionalism. But internally, something more complex was forming, a discipline sharpened by grief. Survivor's guilt is rarely dramatic. It does not announce itself in headlines. It lingers quietly in the mind of the one who remains. Cazale had been respected, admired, already part of cinematic history. Yet he was gone at 42. She was 29 and accelerating. The imbalance was impossible to ignore. He would never see what she was about to become. Every award, every standing ovation would carry an absence. When she filmed Kramer versus Kramer in 1979, the role required her to portray a woman accused of selfishness, a mother who leaves, then returns. On set, Dustin Hoffman pushed aggressively for emotional authenticity, sometimes blurring the line between performance and personal provocation. Stories later surfaced that he referenced Cazale during rehearsals to trigger real reactions. Whether exaggerated or not, the emotional environment was tense. Streep did not explode. She did not retaliate publicly. She adjusted. She absorbed. She delivered exactly what the camera required. That pattern repeated. Emotion was processed internally, then translated into precision. In interviews, she rarely discussed Cazale. She did not frame her performances as catharsis. She framed them as work. Yet something had shifted. Her portrayals after 1978 carried a density that critics began to label as technical brilliance. But technique alone does not explain the weight behind silence. By the time she accepted Sophie's choice, the emotional demand escalated. The role required her to reconstruct trauma, layered upon trauma, war, survival, maternal devastation. She mastered a Polish accent so convincingly that native speakers were startled. She lost weight. She rehearsed obsessively. Director Alan J. Pakula described her focus as unbreakable. But unbreakable can also mean unyielding. The most infamous scene, the forced choice between 2 children, lasts only minutes on screen. But the preparation was extensive. She studied Holocaust testimonies. She immersed herself in survivor accounts. She did not approach it as theatrical sorrow. She approached it as controlled implosion. The scream in that scene is measured, almost restrained, which makes it more disturbing. It does not feel performed. It feels contained. Off-screen, she was newly married to sculptor Don Gummer. The marriage provided stability, privacy, a life outside cinema. Yet the timing remained controversial in some circles. She had married within months of Cazale's death. The narrative formed quickly. Ambitious actress moves on fast. The public prefers visible mourning. She offered none. What the public did not see was that grief does not vanish because a ring is placed on a finger. It reorganizes itself. Professional dominance can create another form of isolation. By 1983, after her second Oscar, she was no longer simply respected. She was feared. Young actresses were compared to her. Scripts were rewritten with her in mind. Directors adjusted expectations around her presence. When a performer becomes a benchmark, relationships shift. Admiration turns into distance. Collaboration turns into caution. She had built a reputation for accent mastery, emotional layering, intellectual preparation. But that reputation also boxed her into seriousness. Comedic roles were rare. Lightness became suspect. Critics began describing her as too perfect, too controlled, even cold. The paradox was sharp. She was praised for emotional depth, yet personally labeled distant. Inside that contradiction lies a quieter collapse. Not addiction, not scandal, but compression. When every public appearance reinforces composure, where does unreleased emotion go? When control becomes identity, what happens if control slips? She never allowed it to slip publicly. No breakdown interviews, no erratic behavior, no missed sets. Instead, she doubled down on preparation. Mastery became armor. The more she was elevated, the more she refined. Success did not slow her. It intensified her discipline. But intensity sustained over years without visible release can harden. By the mid-1980s, some critics argued that her performances were technically astonishing but emotionally engineered. That criticism cut differently. She was being accused not of lacking feeling, but of controlling it too well. The industry celebrated her achievements. The audience wept at her performances. Yet internally, she was carrying a dual burden, proving she deserved her ascent while privately reconciling that someone who had shaped her artistic life would never witness it. When brilliance is built on containment, how long can the structure hold before the weight of what remains unspoken begins to press from within? By 1983, Meryl Streep was no longer rising. She had arrived. 2 Academy Awards, 5 nominations before turning 35. Directors adjusted scripts to fit her range. Studios built prestige projects around her name. She had become the safest bet for seriousness in American cinema. But safety at that level is deceptive. When you become the standard, every performance is measured not against your peers, but against your last triumph. The margin for error disappears. One weak role does not read as experimentation. It reads as decline. Throughout the mid-1980s, she continued choosing demanding characters. Silkwood, 1983, Out of Africa, 1985, Ironweed, 1987. Each role required transformation, accent shifts, emotional layering, physical adjustments. The preparation remained exhaustive. Co-stars describe her as focused to the point of isolation before scenes. Not unfriendly, not unstable, just internally elsewhere. That internal elsewhere had roots. Grief does not evaporate. It changes function. Instead of erupting, it fuels. Instead of breaking structure, it reinforces it. Her process became increasingly intellectual, dissecting motivations, mapping psychological arcs, engineering emotional beats. If earlier performances carried raw undertones, later ones carried precision sharpened by survival. The public, however, prefers narrative simplicity. Some critics began suggesting that she had become too aware of her own craft, too polished, too calculated. The irony was striking. A woman who had transformed private pain into disciplined performance was now being criticized for visible discipline. There was another pressure forming quietly: generational turnover. By the late 1980s, Hollywood was shifting toward blockbuster spectacle and high-concept entertainment. Intimate dramas were less dominant at the box office. Younger actresses emerged with different energies, less theatrical, more contemporary, less accent-driven. The industry that once revolved around emotional gravity was tilting toward scale and speed. For someone whose identity had fused with excellence, that shift could feel destabilizing. If your worth is measured by mastery, What happens when mastery is no longer the central currency? Yet she did not publicly panic. She adjusted again. She diversified roles in the 1990s. She experimented with lighter material. She allowed imperfection into her choices. It was not collapse in the explosive sense. It was recalibration. Still, the private equation remained. John Cazale's absence on one side, professional ascendancy on the other. Every retrospective article about her meteoric rise erased the hospital room. Every statistic about nominations ignored the timing. Success narratives rarely include footnotes about grief. Control had saved her. It had allowed her to work through devastation without imploding publicly. But control also demands maintenance. It requires constant vigilance. Emotion must be shaped, never spilled. Vulnerability must be delivered on cue, never accidentally. That level of containment creates a paradox. Audiences feel authenticity because emotion is real at its source, yet the delivery is engineered. The balance is razor thin. If it tips too far toward feeling, structure collapses. If it tips too far toward structure, feeling disappears. Through the 1980s, she walked that line carefully. No scandals, no public breakdowns, no implosions that tabloids could monetize. Compared to many contemporaries whose careers derailed under pressure, she remained intact. But intact does not mean untouched. The darker side of her ascent was not addiction or self-destruction. It was endurance. Sustained excellence without visible release. Sustained grief without public confession. Sustained pressure without collapse. The industry saw consistency. The audience saw brilliance. But when a life is built on converting pain into performance, does the pain ever truly leave? Or does it simply become the invisible foundation beneath every standing ovation? By the mid-1980s, something subtle began to shift, not in headlines, not in award statistics, but in choice. After years of emotionally punishing roles and relentless prestige projects, Meryl Streep started recalibrating the pace of her career. The turning point was not a single scandal or collapse. It was quieter than that. It was the realization that survival alone was not the same as living. After Sophie's choice in 1982 and her second Oscar in 1983, she could have continued exclusively in tragic territory. The industry would have supported it. Scripts built around suffering arrived regularly. But repeating grief on screen risked fossilizing her identity. Instead, she began widening the frame. Her marriage to Don Gummer stabilized into something durable, for children would follow. Domestic life did not erase ambition, but it redistributed priority. She no longer needed to prove permanence. She had already secured her position. That shift altered her relationship with work. In interviews during the late 1980s, her tone softened. She spoke less about technique and more about balance. She acknowledged fatigue, not dramatic exhaustion, but the wear of intensity sustained too long. The turning point was not an explosive decision. It was permission to diversify, to fail occasionally, to accept roles that were less monumental. The late 1980s and early 1990s brought projects that did not carry the same tragic weight. Some underperformed. Some were critically mixed. For the first time in over a decade, she was not the automatic awards frontrunner. And yet there was no panic, no defensive overcorrection. The recalibration held. Rebirth, in her case, was not reinvention through shock. It was endurance through evolution. She did not abandon seriousness, but she allowed lightness into her repertoire. She accepted that dominance need not be constant to remain meaningful. More importantly, she stopped being defined by proximity to loss. John Cazale remained part of her history, but no longer the silent counterweight to every achievement. The grief that once sharpened every performance had been integrated rather than suppressed. It did not disappear, it matured. This phase revealed something essential. Her earlier ascent had been powered by urgency, personal, emotional, existential. The rebirth phase was powered by choice. She no longer needed to outrun absence. She could move at her own rhythm. Hollywood often equates rebirth with dramatic comeback arcs. In her case, the rebirth was internal. She shifted from proving worth to sustaining presence, from reacting to loss to shaping longevity. When an artist stops running from what hurt them and starts walking with it instead, Does that mark the true beginning of stability? By the 1990s, Meryl Streep was no longer the fragile newcomer who had stunned Hollywood with back-to-back Oscar wins. She had become an institution. The nominations continued to accumulate, steadily, almost rhythmically, until the number reached 21 Academy Award nominations, more than any performer in history. 3 wins, decades apart, a career that refused to burn out. But statistics alone do not explain legacy. Longevity in Hollywood is rare. Longevity without public implosion is rarer. She did not follow the trajectory of many 1970s stars who collapsed under pressure, addiction, or irrelevance. She outlasted eras. She adapted to generational shifts. She moved from intense dramas to political satire, from intimate character studies to large ensemble productions, without surrendering credibility. Her legacy is often framed as technical mastery, accent perfected, emotional registers calibrated, characters built from psychological architecture rather than charisma. Yet beneath that technical surface lies something less measurable: durability. The ability to endure scrutiny, comparison, and expectation without fracturing publicly. She became the benchmark against which other actresses were measured. That status can isolate. Younger performers were praised as the next Meryl Streep, a compliment that quietly reinforces hierarchy. Directors approached her with reverence. Critics scrutinized her with suspicion, waiting for decline. But decline never arrived in catastrophic form. There were quieter phases, commercial disappointments, uneven reviews, yet no collapse narrative ever took hold. Her marriage endured. For children grew up largely outside tabloid spectacle. She guarded privacy fiercely, giving interviews focus on craft rather than confession. In an industry that monetizes vulnerability, she rationed it. That restraint became part of her mystique. Over time, the story of John Cazale shifted from open-wound to historical footnote in profiles about her early life. She spoke of him rarely but respectfully, not as tragedy, but as influence. The man whose 5 films were all nominated for Best Picture remains frozen in time at 42. She continued forward into her 70s, 80s approaching, still working. The contrast is stark. Legacy, in her case, is not only about awards. It is about continuity, about refusing the self-destructive myth of the tortured genius, about proving that greatness does not require visible ruin. She altered the narrative of what a serious actress could look like over 40, over 50, over 60. She normalized endurance. And yet, beneath every retrospective statistic, 21 nominations, 3 Oscars, over 40 years at the top, lies that earlier hinge moment in 1978. The hospital room, the silence after the machine stopped, the decision to keep going. If legacy is what remains after the noise fades, then perhaps hers is not just brilliance, but the quiet decision, made once in grief, to continue. March 1978. A hospital room. A man at 42 taking his final breath. A woman at 29 standing beside him. Future uncertain, grief immediate and unfiltered. March 1983. The Academy Award stage. Applause measured in seconds. Gold reflecting under television lights. A second Oscar in her hands before turning 35. Between those 2 rooms lies a story the public never fully sees. Not scandal, not collapse, not redemption in the dramatic sense, but continuation. The decision to stand upright when disappearing would have been easier. Meryl Streep did not build her legend through chaos. She built it through control, through discipline, through transforming loss into focus rather than spectacle. The world celebrated milestones, 2 Oscars in 5 years, 21 nominations across decades, without pausing to consider what timing does to a human heart. Some artists burn out quickly, some implode under pressure. She absorbed it, she refined it, she endured. But one question lingers quietly beneath every award statistic and every standing ovation. When greatness rises from the same years that carried your deepest loss, is applause a triumph, or a reminder who is no longer there to hear it?